Hello, I'm Jenica Hill, and you've landed on my channel, which is all about celebrating and embracing your full magical self. Because you, my friend, are magical. You are. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much. It helps more people see these videos. Today, I would like to talk about boundaries. Boundaries. I love boundaries. I love them. I love boundaries. I talk about boundaries a little bit in my New Year's resolutions video, and I sort of dropped that I would like to do a boundaries video in the future. Guess what? Today is that day. And today, the day I'm filming, happens to be International Women's Day. So what a perfect day to talk about boundaries, because I don't know about you, but for me, the people in my life who tend to forget to set boundaries are women, because we are doing so much. That's a generalization, of course, but maybe you can relate. I feel like a lot of the women in my life are so giving that they forget to set boundaries. So let's talk about them. I think boundaries are important when it comes to being your full magical self, because if you don't set boundaries, then you don't have enough energy and peace of mind. You might not be living life according to your values, and then you can't be your full magical self. And I'm sure you've heard it before, but if you aren't giving love to yourself, then it's really hard to give love to anybody else. So even if you're a super nurturing person and you want to help save the world, it's really hard to do that when you haven't set boundaries and you don't have any self-love to give. There are several different types of boundaries, right? You've got physical boundaries, which are extremely important, emotional boundaries, maybe scheduling boundaries, all kinds of different categories of boundaries. And you can set different boundaries with different people. You're going to have different physical boundaries with different people, different emotional boundaries with different people and situations, and same with scheduling boundaries. Okay, I'm going to talk about boundaries and how they relate to my life, because my life is the only life I can really use as an example, isn't it? Until I have guests, which I can't wait for that day. Boundaries have come up in my life quite a lot because I am a person who tends to want to please everyone and be there for everyone and be everything for everyone, and I say yes to almost everything. And my mother would probably tell you that even when I was a kid, I was doing the most, everything, all the time. I had a bunch of activities, I was a jump roper. I would go to jump rope for 2 hours, and then my mom would pick me up, and I'd be all sweaty trying to put on my ballet tights to go to ballet. Like, that was me as a kid. I wanted to do everything that I could. And I remember in 5th grade, there was this school assembly, and I was in the student council, but I was also on the jump rope team, and I also had some sort of presentation to give. I was running around during that school assembly, and I don't think I really gave my 100% attention to anything fully, because I was just focused on like getting through that day because it was so much. That is typical Jenica behavior. Maybe you relate to that. Maybe you are a people pleaser. I'm also somewhat of a perfectionist, or I have been. I'm working on it. And that can create a situation where I want everything to be perfect. And that means, doing too much and overstretching myself and expecting to be able to do everything when everyone is just human and we can't do everything, you know? Something's gotta give, and that's where boundaries come in. You might be thinking, okay, setting boundaries is a privilege, and you'd be right in some instances, but I truly believe that everybody can set boundaries according to their life. But before I talk about that, I'm going to tell you 2 stories about boundaries in my life, and maybe they will serve as some inspiration for you. First story, I was in college, and I was in this movement class, and I love movement. Maybe you can tell from my videos. But this was my favorite class. I was a freshman in college. I was in theater school. I was like,
Yeah, I love school. I love movement class.
and it came time for our final project, which was a personal movement piece that each of us would choreograph and, come up with the music for, inspiration for, and then present to the class as our final. So this would be a pretty big percentage of our grade. Yeah, it was a big deal. At one point in explaining this assignment, our instructor told us that we should only agree to be in each other's movement pieces if we said yes to 2 or 3. So we could cast our classmates. I forgot to say that. And we were only supposed to be in 2 or 3 others so that we could focus on our movement piece as well and make sure that ours was, what we wanted it to be. Now, I don't know if I was in the bathroom or if I had just turned on my selective hearing or what, but I didn't hear this instruction. So I had my classmates asking me to be in their movement pieces, and I said yes to, I think, 6 of them. So I was in, I think, 6 or so movement pieces, which was about half, or maybe even a little over half, of the movement pieces in our class. So I spent 2 weeks or so rehearsing with everyone, getting their movement pieces ready. It was so much fun. I loved it because, again, I loved movement. But then, of course, it came down to my movement piece and I hadn't done anything for it. So I had to stay up really, really late the night before our final and come up with my movement piece. Now, earlier that night, I had been rehearsing with another friend in class, and the day of our final happened to be April Fool's Day, April 1st. And we were joking that if I pretended to be sick, it would be this big disaster because, a bunch of people wouldn't be able to do their movement pieces. Be careful what you joke about because I was up so late doing my movement piece and choreographing it that I slept through my alarm the next morning. Luckily, I had set out all of my clothing for each piece on my chair and it was all organized because when I got that call from my friend in class saying,
"Hey, are you coming? Because we've done everybody else's movement piece and we kind of need you for the rest."
I panicked. I grabbed my stuff. I got on my bike, sweaty, rushed to class. And when I got there, I found out that the president of undergraduate acting had decided to watch our movement pieces. Wow, what a great impression I was making. I hadn't met him yet. I think I did one movement piece, and then the next one, I was playing a panther or a tiger or something like that, some big cat. So at one point in the piece, I would get on those, black theater boxes, and we had set them up so it was like one box and then 2 stacked and then 3 stacked. And I had practiced, at one point jumping off the second step and doing a dive roll as this cat. And on this day, I was like, you know what? I'm going to make up for my faux pas of being so late, and I'm going to jump off the highest box and do my dive roll to be very impressive and, make up for my mistake. So I did. And of course, because I hadn't had any muscle memory for this height, my knee hit my nose and my nose proceeded to bleed. And luckily for me, the next choreographed movement was me walking around or, crawling around to the back of the boxes. So I thought I could hide this, but turns out my instructor saw my nose dripping blood, gasped, stopped the class, stopped the movement piece, and we had to reschedule all the rest of the movement pieces for the next week. Luckily, my instructor was very smart and had scheduled an extra day, for this final, so we weren't completely done with class and we didn't have to reschedule a completely new day of class or anything like that, but oh boy, did I feel bad. Essentially, I didn't set boundaries with myself, with my classmates, and because of that, I thought that I was being there for everyone, but I actually ended up not only letting everyone else down, but letting myself down as well. I was so upset after that happened that I went home to my dorm and I cried so hard to my roommate telling her the story that my nose started bleeding again and it bled all over the carpet in my dorm room. So that was a lesson in boundaries. But guess what? I didn't really learn the lesson because flash forward to I'm out of college, I'm living in Atlanta, I'm in improv in Atlanta, and I've said yes to almost every improv group that asked me to be part of it. I've started some of my own. I'm doing all my friends' projects. I am in classes. I'm working my jobs, I'm trying to be a good partner because I was married at that point, all the things. And I had a hard time saying no. I thought I could do everything. And at this time in my life, I was so stressed out from doing all the things I was doing. And keep in mind, if you're an artist or a freelancer of any kind, you probably can relate that I was tending to give away my time and energy for free a lot. And I still kind of do, but less than I used to. And so a lot of these things that I was doing were free. And I was so stressed because I was basically going from thing to thing and I was always late, like a minute or two late to everything because I was just rushing. I was barely eating in time and all that kind of stuff, like shoving bars down my throat, that kind of thing. And I remember being so filled with anxiety that I would be driving in my car and I was so in my head about everything that was going on that I couldn't even remember like where I had turned or if I had made the right turn. And it wasn't safe driving, I'm sure. And I would get home and not even remember the drive. And I just wasn't present in my own life. And I was so stressed that, like, when you feel like your blood is just pumping through your body so hard and you just feel like you're constantly on edge. It's almost like your skin is tingling because you're so anxious. That's how I felt all the time. And my partner kept saying to me,
Jenica, what are you doing? Why are you doing all this stuff?
and finally, one day I just had a breakdown. I was always on the verge of tears whenever I would have a moment to stop and not be busy. My partner had been reading the book Tools of Titans. I think that's where it came from, but I have to look. I don't remember who said it, but basically my partner was like,
Okay, I just read this quote and I think it needs to be your new mantra. When somebody asks you to do something or when a new opportunity comes up, it's either a fuck yes or it's a no. And I need you to start implementing that, please, for your health.
even just hearing that, I took a big, deep breath of relief because I knew that that was what I needed to do. Now, of course, as a people pleaser, this was difficult to implement, and I had to finish out some of my responsibilities that I had taken on. But I started to think about which aspects of my life at that time were not a fuck yes, even if they were a maybe or an almost yes, they had to go. It was hard to say no to people, and some people were not happy. They were mad at me, they were disappointed, but saying no to things was so powerful. It felt so good. And it allowed me to have space and time in my life to actually get to know myself. This was before I had figured out that I'm bisexual. So when I started to create boundaries, I actually had time to reflect, to journal, to have like a morning routine. And because of this, I was just a much happier person. And the things I did say yes to, I was showing up for 100%. So those are my stories about boundaries. Now, I will say, if you are somebody who has been on a hamster wheel your whole life, hello, we live in America. Well, maybe you don't live in America if you're watching this, but if you live in a Western country that's, focused on capitalism, we often feel like we have to be busy to be worth anything. And I know I feel this way because on days when I wake up and I don't have a lot to do, I feel like I go through a complete existential crisis. And sometimes setting boundaries can feel like that and it can feel scary. But it's so necessary. Okay, now you might be asking, Jenica, how am I supposed to set boundaries? All the things that I'm doing in my life are necessary. And maybe it feels like that. But I guarantee that you can find even a little boundary to set that will help lessen your anxiety, make you feel freer, make you feel more like yourself. Even if you have to find 5 minutes a day to spend on yourself, to meditate or journal or, drink some water, that is a boundary that you start with, okay? How do you start this process? If you watch any of my videos, you know I'm a huge fan of self-reflection. And I think that you need to do some self-reflection to come up with boundaries. You do this by, thinking deeply, meditating, journaling, talking to someone you trust, speaking out loud. Think about values that you want in your life. Maybe you've thought of a couple of words for the year or one word for the year, hearkening back to the 2020 resolutions video. If you set some words for the year or you have values that you know that you really, really care about, think about what aspects of your life are in alignment with those values and which aspects are not. And maybe there are things that you're doing that you can set boundaries around. Maybe it's a negative thought that you continue to have that you're going to set boundaries with yourself about. Maybe it's a friend that isn't such a great friend anymore and you need to start spending less time with that person. Maybe you need to set more boundaries about your COVID safety. Maybe you keep saying yes to hang out with people with masks on and it's not making you comfortable and you need to stop doing that. Maybe it's a boundary with your job. You need to take on fewer hours, and of course, that's a financial consideration. But maybe you want to find a new job and it might take some time, but start the process. Think about what you can do. Now, maybe you're somebody who has kids and it's like your kids are busy, you're working, and you're like, there's no way to set boundaries. I promise you, if you sit with yourself for a little bit of time, you can find something that you can do to make a shift right now for yourself and allow yourself to be you and take time for you. So do some self-reflection this week and do a little experiment. Try a small boundary this week. Set a small boundary and see how it ignites your life, or maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear how setting boundaries works for you, or maybe you've already set some. I would love to hear about them. It's just so important, and I know if you're somebody who likes to be there for others, it might feel selfish, but I promise you it's not to set boundaries. And I also know that some weeks you're going to be busy and you just have to get through those weeks. I'm having one of those weeks this week, and sometimes that happens. But in general, you can set parameters in your life to make sure that you're living life the way that you want and setting boundaries where you can. I feel like that was a very long-winded way at the end there of saying, try setting boundaries. Just trust me on this. I can't tell you how much it's made a difference in my life. It might be really hard at first, but you'll get better at it and you will start to feel more and more like yourself the more boundaries that you set and the more time that you have for yourself and the things you actually enjoy doing. So with that, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful, maybe gave you a little bit of inspiration. Feel free to take that mantra because it's not even mine. It's either a fuck yes or a no if you're an overscheduler. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, comment below. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And of course, as always, go out and be your full magical self today. The world needs you just as you are.